Good morning. We are now on to active gaming. So we've kind of gotten through some policy stuff, some philosophical approaches to how we make policy changes, all that good stuff. And now we're on to active gaming. We're going to talk about active gaming for the next 2 weeks. And kind of like last week, I think these PowerPoints are going to be a little on the shorter side, which I'm sure you guys appreciate, but you guys are going to have to do a little bit more outside of the classroom. And part of that is just being a participant in some of the activities. So let's kind of jump in. So really just an introduction for all the things we've been saying, and I'm going to repeat it again next week. And at this point, you guys should understand what we're trying to get across on why we're looking at physical activity, active gaming, obviously in physical education settings, right? But this is really, again, to just paint that picture. One, obesity, very bad, right? I say it, and I'm not joking when I say it, but I've repeated it many times, right? Obesity is correlated with cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, a host of disease states. So our goal should clearly be to reduce obesity. Oh, what else do we know, right? So we know obesity is bad. We know that there's been at least a threefold increase in obesity rates of children, really ages 5 to 18. It's been 5 to 19% depending on the population you're looking at. So a threefold increase over the last few decades. We also know that these increased obesity rates are correlated with a sedentary lifestyle. So I wouldn't say that a sedentary lifestyle is the only cause, but we do know that it's correlated with an increase in sedentary lifestyle. Additionally, it's correlated with an increase of screen time. As we've said repeatedly, we know screen time is up and up and up on the upwards of 4 to 5 hours per day in youth and adolescents. So I think what we should be trying to do is, okay, screen time usually equates to a sedentary lifestyle. How can we change that? And that's really, in essence, what active gaming really is. We know that 88% of children, and this is, this book is slightly dated, it's probably higher now, but 88% of children have a gaming console at home. What we also know is within physical education now, the older model of how we would run physical education classes no longer will suffice. The model of teaching or coaching, whatever you want to call it, to normative data and normative standards is no longer sufficient. Having children do the presidential fitness test, I don't think we have that anymore, but basically where they do push-ups, running, and all sorts of other tests and have them shoot for certain standards does not interest them, right? There's no interest in the older model, so we have to find new ways to motivate them. And because of this, active gaming has been born, right? I think we should realize one goal, right? Not the goal, but one goal of active gaming is really to just increase fun, which inevitably will increase participation, okay? Now, I kind of put this asterisk here, just, full disclosure, right? I have been a person my entire life who has been physically active to some degree. Now, I own a gym. I coach track and field. Obviously, I teach exercise science, right? I myself struggle with understanding these things. And this has been something about owning a gym that I learned over the years, right? I've always enjoyed being physically active. I love it, right? I love it. It took me a while to learn that not everyone loves being physically active. So what you sometimes might hear from me is you sometimes might hear me talking about these things. It's because like my inherent bias is that I don't understand how other people don't like being physically active. Again, I've changed that over recent years and I've come to understand it, but it's been something I struggle with. And I think it's important for you guys at a much younger age, whatever, 18, 19, 21, to to start to realize that maybe you do like being physically active, or maybe you like the sport of baseball, maybe you like the sport of soccer, but we have to understand that other people may genuinely have a disdain for being physically active for whatever reason. So we have to come up with these innovative approaches to promote the interest in physical activity. So again, despite what your inherent biases are towards physical activity, we have to put those aside and really come from a much more open-minded perspective. So just a little history on active gaming. Um, where did it really start? There was some games before this, but really it started with 1998 with Dance Dance Revolution. That is when it really started the explosion of active gaming. I do remember there were some games prior to this where some people were somewhat active. A very, very old game before this was something like Duck Hunt. It wasn't really physically active, but you were moving around. Now, Dance Dance Revolution in '98 was really kind of the turning point or the explosion of physically active gaming. And it was honestly kind of cool, for many of you guys were not born in '98, and even if you were, you don't really remember how it kind of blew up. But Dance Dance Revolution, in the early 2000s, 2005, 2010, somewhere around that time range, like you couldn't go to like a mall where there wasn't a DDR, right? Whether it was an arcade, movie theater, bowling alley, really they were everywhere. And then beyond that, then they started to get into the house where they had Dance Dance Revolution pads on gaming consoles. So it kind of exploded. And then from there, like other gaming consoles kind of caught on. The first major one was in 2008 where Nintendo released the Wii. The Wii was a big step in the right direction because it went on beyond just dancing and released all sorts of games. There was Wii Sports, Wii Fit, and if any of you ever have played Wii Sports, like it actually was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and not only was it a lot of fun, but like with Dance Dance Revolution, you were limited in your options. If you didn't have rhythm or if you didn't enjoy music, which not everyone does, right? We gave you all sorts of options now, right? You could do Wii Golf, Wii Tennis, there was all sorts of fit games, which I don't even remember at this point. But it gave people options, okay? And then after Wii, others really caught on, and there was electronic sports, Sony Move. I think the Microsoft Kinect was another popular one, um, and obviously to this day, it continues to remain very popular. So your book classifies active gaming into three different areas. And truth be told, I believe nowadays things have really merged. Again, your book is slightly outdated, but I think these things have merged over the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. But the way they classify them are extra games, interactive games, and active learning games. So the way it breaks it down is extra games are really interactive, truly interactive, where it requires a TV so the student can watch specific actions on the TV. Um, and it involves video gameplay. You're pursuing some sort of video game, and the classic examples are what we just went over: the DDR, Wii Sports Connect, so on and so forth. Right now, not every active game requires a screen. Right, so there are interactive games which get people moving, and these are non-screen based. So this example on the right is an example of interactive games where we call this sports wall, right? Where students are supposed to throw something against the wall, hit the target, you get points for this. I would argue the technology is still required, but I would argue that nowadays we're getting beyond this. Like Sports Wall nowadays would probably have some sort of projector screen where all of a sudden there's some sort of interactive play with a character on the screen nowadays. Again, they do have these, but nowadays I think things have changed. And then moving on to the last one are active learning games. Once again, so these are screen based, but it tends to have a much more of an academic focus, right? So, what are the benefits of active gaming? Why have we, or why are we trying to switch towards this model or move towards this model? And the number one reason by far is fun, right? 86% of adolescents rated fun as the number one thing in their life. Why did we start sports when we were 5, 6, 7, 8 years old? Because it was fun. And it wasn't because of the competitiveness of it. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it's just because our friends were there and we wanted to play. Really, sports start as play. Like, my 4-year-old daughter, what does she want to do? Sometimes she wants to have a catch, and we just play. That's all it really is. So I think getting back to that play element is incredibly important. Why are active games beneficial? They can also be motivating, right? They can also be motivating, rewarding technical skills, keep players from becoming bored. So if you talk about the technical skills, think about Wii Golf, right? The aspect of Wii Golf or Wii Tennis. If anyone remembers the backhand on Wii Tennis, that was always a little bit challenging. And if you mastered the backhand on Wii Tennis, it was definitely a rewarding experience, and it was motivating to try to learn the backhand. Um, Another thing is it keeps players from becoming bored, right? A nice thing about games like Wii Sports, and obviously as we've evolved, there's more than that, is that there's many options to choose from, right? So if you have the right setup, you can play one game and play it until you do become bored, and then move on to the next game, right? So it really kind of prevents that boredom. And that kind of goes hand in hand with choice. It goes hand in hand with choice where there's many different options. User friendly, and that's kind of what your assignments are about for the next 2 weeks. This option of active gaming really gives the students an opportunity to explore games and learn independently. Let the students learn. What I say is you guys all know more than me, right? So I'm going to give you guys some games to play. And honestly, if any of you guys have any active games specifically for the phone and any apps, recommend them to me. Shoot me an email if you know of any active games that will keep you physically active that I don't incorporate into this class. Let me know. I'd love to learn more about them. And that's the great thing about this is, kids, students know more, and they could continue to learn and explore on their own, right? I'm going to give you guys a game, and probably within a week or two, I can get an email of you guys telling me like, oh, you can do this in the game. It's pretty cool. You can do that, right? You guys can learn independently, and that's one of the major benefits of active gaming. Socialization. It creates excitement. Games, any game, whether it's in physical education or not, it creates excitement. If we think beyond physical education, there's all sorts of games in the classrooms you can do that keep the kids interested, right? And it gets them talking. So with video games, right, you talk about like what level did you get to this, or how did you do this if you unlock something, right? So it creates excitement and talking points. And then lastly, which we're going to talk about next week, this is an entire chapter, is it does increase physical activity. Now, there are not some inherent concerns, and call me old school, whatever you want. I'm not 60 or 70 years old, but I do kind of side on some of the concern, the opposite, the opposition here, right? So concerns. So with this, we're promoting indoor play versus outdoor play. Don't we want to get kids outside actively doing things? And again, some of this can be taken outside, which is one of the things I'm giving you. But for the most part, active gaming does take place inside because like you need an electrical outlet, so on and so forth. So that is one concern. Another concern, right? Encouraging more screen time. So we've correlated screen time with obesity and sedentary lifestyles. Why are we encouraging more screen time? And really the goal is not necessarily to encourage more screen time, it's to encourage physical activity. Some people may even argue that it's to replace screen time hours. You guys were supposed to look at your phones and see how many screen time hours you have. I forget what mine was. Maybe it was like 6 or 7 hours per day. But to replace some of those hours with being physically active. Now, this is another major one for me. Traditional physical activity better. Yeah, I think there is a concern that some traditional physical activity is better. But remember, right, with active gaming, the goal is not to replace. The goal is not to replace sports. We still, in physical education settings, want to encourage playing basketball, playing soccer, and having fun. But the goal is to really supplement your curriculum. Some other concerns, which I think have really been mitigated over the last few years, are affordability, whether it's within the classroom or for the student themselves. I think this, yeah, I think it's been really mitigated over the last 5 years, where many gaming consoles for schools, or even like if you're thinking at DDR pads, like they're much cheaper than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. And then if you look at, other issues, like there's so many apps nowadays where there's free versions of every app, one of which you guys are going to use. I think that kind of addresses that concern. Space issues, I think that's just, space and maintenance are just proper planning. Yes, with any type of hardware you get for active gaming, there are some inherent concerns, but what do you do with things like maintenance? You purchase warranties. So for implementation and assessment, let's start with one. You guys have to understand the equipment. As I've said to you guys, this is a little bit out of my realm. I'm an exercise science guy. I own a gym. I do things in person. So we have to understand our equipment. So for your assignment, like, this is not my world. What did I do? I had to download a few different apps and play around with a few apps myself. So like part of my goal was understanding kind of how the apps work. I downloaded one app. I wasn't really thrilled with how, I don't know, the engagement or my engagement in the app. So I tried another one, and now I'm going to give you guys instructions. So I had to understand the equipment before I used it. And obviously that kind of goes hand in hand with teaching. You need to base things on state and local objectives, right? As I've already said, and I bolded this, we need to understand that active gaming really is meant to complement your curriculum, not replace it. So things like sports like basketball and soccer should still be in the curriculum. I think safety is a major concern, especially depending on your age group. You get kids excited, they're running around, laughing, having fun. They can get reckless. The truth is they can get reckless, 10, 12 years old. So safety is something with like wires or gaming consoles that are close to water fountains, like that needs to be addressed. So with wires, they need to be, either taped down or put in installed in a certain manner. Creating walkways with cones, super important. Then, showing students how they have to walk and use certain equipment can be very important. Now, the assessment piece. Listen, we're using technology. I think assessment, especially in physical education, use technology, right? So instead of just having them play the games, right, assess them via heart rate monitors, pedometers, accelerometers, GPS technology, so on and so forth. Part of your assignment is I'm going to assess you guys, right, using some of these things, all right, GPS technology, pedometers, which are all really in your phones nowadays. And then lastly, remember, we are assessing learning, right? Not just physical activity. So there should be some sort of lesson built into a lot of these things. So you'll see, like, your lesson for this week is understanding heart rate, right? Obviously, it's a very short one, but remember that when you are assessing, it's not just having fun. It's not just physical activity. There should be more beyond that. All right. So we're on to your assignment. And, like these first 4 bullet points are really just what I would give in a classroom, depending on the age group, obviously, right? And you could cater this to your age group. This would obviously probably go with some older students, 15, 16, 17. But what do we need to know? A lower resting heart rate is generally associated with improved cardiovascular function. In addition to that, it's associated with improved performance, improved endurance. So we should strive to really lower our resting heart rate. And when I say we should strive to lower our resting heart rate, we need to understand that our heart rate, right, the amount of beats our heart, or the amount of times our heartbeats per minute, which is how we define heart rate, is trainable. Right? So our heart rate is trainable. Simply put, you could say your heart gets stronger if you train it. So how do you train your heart? Well, things like walking, running, swimming, cycling, anything that's going to elevate your heart, right? Or your heart rate is training it, right? So part one of this activity is going to be you finding your resting heart rate. I will provide a link on Blackboard if you guys don't know how to find your resting heart rate. In addition to that, you can use heart rate monitors if you have one into your Apple Watch or whatever it is. Just make sure when you're finding your resting heart rate, you should be seated and resting. One thing that should be on here, again, if we're trying to teach you guys or teach students, is the average resting heart rate is 60 to 100 beats per minute. And again, generally speaking, a lower resting heart rate is better, generally speaking. So your actual assignment, sorry, there's a lot of writing on here. Your actual assignment is to download the game within the App Store called Zombies Run. All right. You're going to play a minimum of 2 levels in Zombies Run. For each level played, record your heart rate during, somewhere in the middle, and immediately after. Right? So the way the game works is you're going to basically start a timer. You're going to have to make sure you enable your phone to track your activity, whether it's through the GPS or tracking steps, that's up to you. And at some point during your 20, 25, 30-minute walk or run, that's up to you, you're going to record your heart rate. At the completion of your activity, you're going to also record your heart rate. When you finish each level, make sure you take a screenshot, right? I'm going to submit a screenshot on Blackboard, but in general, it absolutely should include, right, your total distance, your total time, your total steps, and your average pace. I will, here we go, incentivize things. Anyone who walks or runs a combined 3.5 kilometers will get an extra point added to their assignment. So that's really not that far. Again, I kind of beta tested this, right, where or piloted it, I should say. And I completed one level and I went for, 21, 22 minutes, and I jogged a little bit. I walked half of it, maybe even less than that, and I completed 1.6 kilometers. So if you do a combined 3.5 kilometers, which is pretty easy, I'll give you guys an extra point on the assignment. So remember, you're submitting 2 screenshots, right? 2 screenshots. Lastly, in a Word document, in addition to the screenshots. So the screenshots should be submitted all together with the Word document, right? Send me what your resting heart rate was, your heart rate while playing, and your post-exercise heart rate, right? So I should see your resting heart rate, your heart rate while playing, your post-exercise heart rate. And remember, I need the heart rate while playing twice and the post-exercise heart rate twice. So I should really see 5 heart rates listed. Then comes the writing portion. Right? So think back to the 6 benefits of active gaming that I listed, right? Number 1 being fun, 2 being like increased physical activity, 3 being socialization. So think back to that slide or go to your text, right? Explain how this game that I chose for you guys to partake in, how it may capitalize on one or even more of these benefits. Additionally, we have to understand that not every game is for every person, right? I want you to explain one aspect you did not enjoy within this app or game. It's totally up to you, right? And then lastly, can this be used in a physical education setting? Why or why not? There's no right or wrong to this question. It's just to get you guys thinking. How can we use this in physical education? What age group is it appropriate for? These are all things you guys can address, but again, that's kind of up to you. How long should these word passages be? Well, I don't know, 2 to 3, maybe 4 sentences per bullet point. So this should probably be something like, I don't know, at minimum, at absolute minimum, this should be half a page, but it probably should be maybe upwards of a page, half a page to a page. That's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, as usual, just shoot me an email.